Hi, my name is Jessica Martinez. I'm 34, a single mother, and I live just outside of Austin, Texas. Not far from the bustling city, but far enough to have a little space, a little peace. It's a good life, mostly. Simple, focused. Because my world, my entire universe, really revolves around one person. My son, Dylan. Dylan is 9 years old. 9 years of light, of challenges, of unconditional love. He is, without a doubt, my heart and soul. From the moment he entered this world, he's been a fighter. He was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at birth, a condition that's shaped our lives in ways I never could have predicted. Life hasn't been easy, no. There have been countless doctor appointments, therapy sessions, late nights filled with worry, and triumphs that felt like scaling Everest. But through it all, I've fought like a lioness for him. Every single day, I've poured every ounce of my being into making sure he's happy, safe, and knows how incredibly loved he is. He's my purpose, my motivation, my everything. So imagine how shattered I was, how utterly bewildered when someone in my own family, someone who claimed to love us, someone I had welcomed into our home, would target my sweet boy in the most hurtful, sickening way possible. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated act designed to cause distress, to inflict pain. And then, as if to twist the knife even further, she had the audacity to dismiss it all, to call it just a prank. Just a prank. The words still make my blood run cold, even now. Because what happened to Dylan was anything but harmless. It was cruel. It was dark. It was a breach of trust so profound that it shook me to my very core and forced me to confront a reality I never wanted to face. That sometimes the people closest to you can be the most dangerous. But this isn't just a story about pain and betrayal. What started as an act of casual cruelty, born from a warped sense of humor and a deep-seated meanness, ended in justice. And not just the kind of justice you find in courtrooms, though that played its part. It ended in something even more satisfying, something that brought a peace I didn't think was possible again. It brought clarity, strength, and a deeper understanding of what true family really means. Have you ever had someone cross a line so vile, so disrespectful, so utterly out of bounds that you felt you had no choice but to fight back? Not just for yourself, but for someone you love, someone vulnerable? Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand and say, no more? Let me know in the comments below. I'm eager to hear your experiences, because I know I'm not the only one who's faced this kind of battle. And if you want to hear more real stories like mine, stories that expose the ugly side of family dynamics, stories where the good guys eventually win, then please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Trust me, this one's just getting started. And it's a story worth hearing. Life with Dylan, even with its unique challenges, had settled into a rhythm. A rhythm of therapy, school, doctor's appointments, and the quiet joys of watching him grow and overcome obstacles. As a single mother, every decision revolved around him. His comfort, his progress, his happiness. When my husband passed away, it left a void, not just for me, but for Dylan too. His side of the family, the Callahans, had been a source of support, initially. His mother, Maria, was kind, if a little naive. And then there was Amanda, my late husband's younger sister. She was 26, only a few years younger than me, but in personality and maturity, it felt like decades. Amanda had always been a presence, loud, quick-witted, and with a penchant for what she called dark humor. At first, I tried to make allowances. Grief affects everyone differently, and perhaps her brother's passing had left her feeling adrift. I wanted to maintain peace, especially for Dylan's sake. He deserved to feel connected to his father's side of the family. So, despite an underlying feeling of unease, I continued to allow Amanda to visit. My instincts, though, were often screaming. It wasn't anything overt at first, just subtle shifts in her demeanor, a passive aggressiveness that pricked at me. Especially when she was around Dylan. She'd make comments that felt less like jokes and more like veiled criticisms. Oh, Dylan's still in those braces, huh? Seems like he'd want to be out of them by now. Or, wow, Jessica, you really cater to his every whim, don't you? These weren't said with genuine concern, but with a sneer, a glint in her eye that I couldn't quite decipher. It slowly dawned on me that Amanda seemed jealous. Not in a straightforward, I want what you have way, but something more convoluted. It felt like she was weirdly competitive, especially for attention from the family. When Maria, my mother-in-law, would dote on Dylan or praise me for my dedication, Amanda would often interject with a story about herself or subtly try to redirect the conversation. It was unsettling. It was as if my role as the capable mother and Dylan's status as the special grandchild somehow diminished her. She was the youngest, the one who apparently always craved the spotlight. And now, in her eyes, I was stealing it. Or perhaps Dylan was. I try to rationalize it away. Maybe she was insecure. Maybe she didn't know how to interact with a child with special needs. Maybe I was overthinking things, overly sensitive because of everything Dylan and I had been through. I told myself to be patient, to give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, she was family. And keeping the family together after so much loss felt important, a responsibility. I clung to that fragile piece, even as a tiny voice in the back of my head whispered that something wasn't quite right. But this calm, this seemingly normal family dynamic was incredibly precarious. It was the calm before a storm I couldn't yet imagine. I clung to the idea of family, to the peace, even as Amanda's visits started to become unsettling. The passive-aggressive comments I mentioned before, they began to amplify. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was clear. Her remarks were sharper, less veiled. She'd arrive, often unannounced or with a last-minute text, and almost immediately the atmosphere in my home would shift. She'd sweep in, bringing with her a cloud of thinly veiled judgment. I'd be in the middle of preparing one of Dylan's specialized meals, ensuring it had the right nutrients, and she'd scoff. Still making him baby food, Jess? He's 9, not 9 months. I'd patiently explain the need for soft foods due to his swallowing challenges, but her eyes would just glaze over. She wasn't listening to understand. She was listening to criticize. Her favorite target, it seemed, was my parenting style. She'd mock it openly, often in front of Dylan, though he was usually engrossed in his toys or TV shows and probably didn't fully grasp her tone. "You really coddle him, she'd say, leaning back on my couch as if she owned the place. "He needs to toughen up. Life's a dog-eat-dog world, Jess. You can't protect him from everything." Then she'd question Dylan's therapy schedule. "So many appointments? Is that really necessary? Seems like a waste of time and money." I'd tell her about the importance of physical therapy for maintaining his muscle tone, for preventing contractures, for simply giving him the best possible quality of life. But she'd just roll her eyes, as if his well-being was an inconvenience, a tiresome charade I was putting on. She'd hint that I was overprotective, that I was holding Dylan back by not pushing him harder, by coddling him. It was infuriating because everything I did was for his benefit, based on doctors' recommendations and pure, unadulterated love. One time, she even brought over a toy for Dylan. It was a remote control monster truck, the kind that was fast, loud, and required intricate fine motor skills to maneuver. Dylan, with his limited hand dexterity and sensitivity to loud noises, wouldn't be able to play with it, and it would likely overwhelm him. When I gently pointed this out, suggesting a different type of toy would be more suitable, she scoffed. "Oh, right. Everything has to be adapted, doesn't it? Can't just let him be a normal kid." She left it on the table, expecting him to play with it. When he didn't, she muttered something about him being too sensitive. Each visit, each barbed comment, each dismissive gesture was a red flag. They fluttered violently in my periphery, warnings I tried to ignore or rationalize away. I attempted to set boundaries, gently, because I truly didn't want to create drama within the family. "Amanda, please, let's not talk about Dylan's therapy like that," I'd say, or "I appreciate your concern, but I've got his care handled." My voice would be calm, measured. I thought if I didn't react, if I didn't give her the fight she seemed to be seeking, she would eventually stop. But she didn't. She just kept pushing, inching closer to a line I was desperate to keep intact. I felt a growing sense of dread before her visits, a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with Dylan's health. It was about her. And I knew, deep down, that this fragile piece I was so desperately trying to maintain was on the verge of shattering. I replay that day in my mind sometimes, trying to pinpoint the exact moment I should have said no. The alarm bells were ringing, a low thrum beneath my skin, an insistent unease I couldn't shake. But I ignored them, trying to be reasonable, trying to see the best in someone who consistently showed me their worst. And because of it, Dylan suffered. That day, that terrible, awful day, should never have happened. It was a Saturday, and I had a half-day shift at the clinic. It wasn't a long shift, just 4 hours, but it was enough to require childcare. Usually, I'd arrange for a trusted friend or a professional caregiver who specialized in special needs children to watch Dylan. They understood his routines, his equipment, how to best support him. But Amanda had been particularly insistent that week. She'd called me several times, offering, pushing, almost begging to watch Dylan. "Come on, Jess," she'd pleaded over the phone, sounding surprisingly earnest. It's time I stepped up. I'm family. Dylan and I need to bond more. You work so hard, you deserve a break. I can handle it. My hesitation was palpable, even over the phone. I remembered all the snide remarks, the eye rolls, the way she seemed to dismiss Dylan's needs. But then, my mother-in-law, Maria, called. Maria, bless her heart, was always trying to smooth things over, to keep the family dynamics pleasant. She caught me at a weak moment, stressed from work and feeling guilty about needing help. "Jessica, dear, are you going to let Amanda help out with Dylan this weekend?" Maria's voice was gentle, persuasive. "She's really trying, you know." She told me she wants to be more responsible, more involved. She's finally showing some growing maturity, I think. It would mean a lot to her, and it would give you a much-needed break. Maria's words chipped away at my resolve. Growing maturity. A small part of me desperately wanted to believe it. Maybe Amanda was finally turning a corner. Maybe she genuinely wanted to connect with Dylan. Plus, a part of me felt obligated. They were my late husband's family, and I valued the connection, despite Amanda's behavior. I was tired, too. The constant vigilance, the emotional and physical demands of caring for Dylan, it all added up. A few hours of knowing he was with family, even if it was Amanda, seemed less stressful than finding a new last-minute sitter. I convinced myself it would be fine. It was just a few hours. What could possibly go wrong? So, reluctantly, I agreed. I spent an hour going over Dylan's routine, his Medicap, ions, his snacks, where all his equipment was, what to do in case of any issues. I showed her his communication board, his favorite quiet activities. Amanda nodded, distractedly, scrolling through her phone half the time. A red flag, yes. But I ignored it. I reiterated the importance of his leg braces, reminding her they were not to be removed unless absolutely necessary and always replaced immediately. When I walked out the door that Saturday morning, my heart felt heavy. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself I was overreacting. Dylan waved goodbye, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. 4 hours later, I pulled back into my driveway. A knot of dread started tightening in my stomach as I walked up to the door. The house was too quiet. No usual sounds of Dylan's favorite cartoons or the soft whirring of his therapy toys. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The first thing I saw was Amanda, standing awkwardly in the middle of the living room, fiddling with her phone, her shoulders hunched. And then I saw Dylan. He was huddled in the corner of the sofa, his small frame shaking, tears silently streaming down his face, his eyes wide and red-rimmed. He was clutching a faded teddy bear to his chest, his breathing hitched. He looked absolutely terrified. My heart stopped. It felt like an ice pick rammed into my chest. "Dylan!" I rushed to him, dropping my purse, my keys clattering forgotten on the floor. I knelt beside him, wrapping my arms around him, pulling him close. He buried his face in my shoulder, his small body trembling uncontrollably. "What happened?" "Dylan, baby, are you okay?" I whispered, my voice thick with fear and a building rage. I looked up at Amanda, who was still avoiding my gaze, her face pale. She shifted her weight, cleared her throat. Her voice came out in a strained, unnatural stutter. It was just a prank. Just a prank. The words hung in the air, cold and empty. My stomach dropped, not gently, but as if yanked by a violent force. It wasn't a drop. It was a plummet. That feeling, the one where you suddenly know, with absolute certainty, that something truly awful has happened, and you are completely unprepared for the reality of it. My world tilted on its axis, and I knew, with sickening clarity, that nothing would ever be the same. TG words, just a prank, echoed in my ears, but they provided no comfort, no explanation. Only a chilling confirmation that Amanda was behind Dylan's distress. I held Dylan tightly, whispering reassurances, asking what happened. He just clung to me, sobbing too hard to speak, occasionally mumbling words like braces and alone. I looked up at Amanda, my voice dangerously low. What did you do? She shrugged, her eyes still darting around the room, avoiding mine. Nothing. Just trying to have some fun, loosen him up. He's so serious all the time. Fun? He's hysterical, Amanda. What did you do to him? My voice was rising now, a tremor of pure fury starting to snake through me. It wasn't a big deal. I just misplaced his old braces for a second, you know? Told him he needed to find them if he wanted to walk like you taught him. She tried to laugh, a hollow, unnatural sound. Just a little game. He got upset, that's all. Misplaced them? Amanda, they're essential for his mobility. You know that. The thought of Dylan, dependent on those braces to stand and walk without them, struck a cold fear in my heart. He would have felt completely helpless, trapped. But then, Dylan pulled back slightly from my embrace. His little voice, still choked with sobs, managed to push out a few more words. Said Mommy. Leave. Forever. That hit me like a physical blow. Mommy was going to leave him forever? The fear, the abandonment he must have felt. It twisted my gut, turning the fear into a volcanic rage. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my voice steady, but it was cracking under the strain. What did you say to him, Amanda? She finally met my eyes, a flicker of defiance in hers. I told you it was just a prank. I told him he'd have to crawl forever after Mommy abandons him. Just messing with him. He needs to learn life's not fair, Jess. You can't protect him from everything. My mind reeled. This wasn't messing with him. This was calculated cruelty, targeting his deepest fears and vulnerabilities. It was sadistic. As I comforted Dylan, Amanda's phone, which she had been nervously clutching, vibrated in her hand. A notification popped up on the screen, illuminating her face. I caught a glimpse of it, a video icon and a caption that flashed by too quickly to read, but it looked like a social media app. And in the tiny thumbnail, I saw Dylan's tear-streaked face. A terrible, dawning realization washed over me. She hadn't just done it. She had filmed it, and she looked almost pleased with herself, as if she was documenting some hilarious triumph. I spent the next hour trying to soothe Dylan, to convince him that Mommy would never leave him, that he was safe. Amanda offered no help, just sat there, occasionally glancing at her phone. She refused to explain anything further. Just kept muttering, it was just a prank. He's fine. That night, after I finally settled Dylan down, his little body still trembling occasionally in his sleep, a cold, unwavering resolve hardened in my heart. I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to know the extent of what she had done, what she had recorded. I waited until she eventually fell asleep on the couch, exhausted by her own twisted performance. My hands trembling, I carefully, quietly retrieved her phone. It wasn't hard to find the video. It was in her recently recorded section, and the app she'd been on earlier was still open. What I saw broke me. The footage was shaky, amateurish, but horrifyingly clear. Dylan, on the floor, clearly distressed, looking around wildly. Amanda's voice, off camera, taunting him, telling him his braces were gone, that I was never coming back, that he'd be stuck crawling. And then, the worst part, her laughter. Low, cruel, mocking laughter intercut with Dylan's desperate, heart-wrenching sobs. His little body crumpled, his face contorted in a silent scream of fear and abandonment. She zoomed in on his face, enjoying his terror. I watched it once, a second time, then a third, each viewing twisting the knife deeper into my soul. My sweet, sensitive boy, reduced to a terrified, sobbing mess, all for her twisted amusement. It wasn't just a prank. It was torture. The tears streamed down my face, hot and furious. But beneath the profound hurt, something shifted within me. The anguish transformed into a searing heat, a primal rage that incinerated any remnants of my previous hesitation, my desire for family peace. This wasn't just about Amanda being immature. This was about a deliberate act of emotional abuse against my disabled child. And it awoke the lioness within me. The fight was no longer optional. It was inevitable to each video played on a loop in my mind, Dylan's terrified face, Amanda's cackling laughter. It was dawn by the time I finally turned off her phone, my own tears long since dried, replaced by an icy, unwavering resolve. There was no going back. Any shred of peace, any hope of maintaining family bonds had evaporated with that footage. All that remained was the primal instinct to protect my child. I woke Amanda roughly, shaking her until her eyes fluttered open against the early light filtering through the living room curtains. She stretched, groaning, and then saw my face. The fury radiating off me must have been palpable, because her casual morning demeanor dissolved instantly. "What's wrong, Jess?" "You look like you've seen a ghost," she mumbled, trying to rub the sleep from her eyes. I thrust her phone at her, the screen still displaying a paused frame of Dylan's weeping face. "This," I said, my voice low, trembling with a controlled ferocity, "this is what's wrong. You filmed it. You tortured my son and you filmed it." Her eyes widened, a flicker of something that could have been fear, but was quickly replaced by her usual sneer. "Oh, that? Come on, Jess, it's just a funny video. He's fine." It really wasn't a big deal. She tried to snatch the phone, but I held it away, my grip like iron. "Not a big deal?" My voice cracked, but the anger immediately solidified it. "You pretended to lose his leg braces, the very tools that give him independence. You told him I would abandon him, exploiting his deepest fears. And you laughed while he sobbed, Amanda. You delighted in his terror. What kind of monster does that?" She slumped back against the couch cushions, crossing her arms, her face a mask of bored indifference. "Look, I told you, it's just a prank. He needs to learn life's not fair. You're too soft on him." "I was just trying to teach him a lesson." "Just teaching him life's not fair," she sneered, mimicking me without an ounce of remorse. The words were like gasoline on an already raging fire. That was it. The absolute, unshakable certainty that this was not a misunderstanding, not an accident. This was deliberate malice. I exploded. Verbally, yes, but more than that, I felt a tidal wave of raw, protective instinct wash over me. All those years of biting my tongue, of trying to keep the peace, of putting up with her passive aggressiveness, it all vanished in that moment. "Get out!" I screamed, my voice raw. "Get out of my house right now. And don't you ever, ever come near Dylan again. You're sick, Amanda. You're disturbed, and you have no place in our lives." She scrambled up, a genuinely startled look on her face. The casual indifference was gone, replaced by a flicker of genuine shock. She started gathering her things, mumbling something about me overreacting, about how I was going to ruin everything. I didn't care. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer force of the emotion coursing through me. As soon as she was out the door, the lock clicking shut behind her, I sank onto the floor, pulling out my own phone. My fingers fumbled slightly as I dialed. It wasn't the number of a friend or Maria or anyone who might try to talk me out of it. It was 911. "Yes, hello. I need to report emotional abuse of a minor," I heard myself say, surprisingly steady. "My son. He was subjected to a cruel and deliberate act of emotional torment by a family member. And I have proof." The dispatcher's calm voice talked me through it, connecting me with a local officer. It felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. But as I spoke, as I laid out the facts, holding back tears so my voice wouldn't break, a strange sense of clarity settled over me. This wasn't about family honor or keeping up appearances anymore. This was about justice for Dylan. About drawing a line that could never be uncrossed. About protecting the most precious thing in my life from someone who had proven themselves to be a true predator. I was no longer just a mother. I was an advocate. And I would fight with every fiber of my being. Calling 911 was the first step into a new, uncharted territory. Within the hour, a patrol car was outside my home. Detective Ray Simmons arrived, a kind-faced man with a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. He listened patiently as I recounted the horrifying events, my voice unwavering, even as my hands still trembled. When I showed him the video on Amanda's phone, his expression solidified. The casual compassion turned into a focused concern, and I knew he understood the gravity of what had happened. He assured me they would launch a full investigation. And that's when the real fallout began. As soon as the police left, I called Maria, my mother-in-law. I expected shock, possibly anger at Amanda, maybe even sadness for Dylan. What I got instead was a chilling coldness. From the moment I mentioned the police, her tone shifted. "Jessica, what have you done?" she whispered, her voice laced with accusation. "You call the police? On family? This is a private matter, not something for law enforcement." I tried to explain again, tried to make her understand the depth of Amanda's cruelty, Dylan's fear, the undeniable evidence in the video. But it was like talking to a wall. She refused to watch the footage, claiming she didn't need to see it to know her daughter. Over the next few days, the family phone tree lit up, but not in support of Dylan or me. Amanda played the victim brilliantly. She spun a tale of a vengeful sister-in-law, a dramatic single mother trying to ruin her life, blowing a harmless joke out of proportion. She painted herself as the innocent party, the one being unjustly targeted. She cried, she appealed to their loyalty, she exaggerated my temper. Slowly, deliberately, the collective attitude of my late husband's family turned cold. My phone stopped ringing. Texts went unanswered. When I did speak to someone, they would express concern for Amanda or subtly blame me for ruining her future. "She's young. Jessica, she just made a mistake," one aunt said, as if psychological torment of a child was a simple misstep. "Family works these things out internally," another commented, implying I had broken some sacred code. Maria, my mother-in-law, became her fiercest defender. She couldn't reconcile the image of her sweet, if sometimes misguided, daughter with the monster I described. She chose to believe Amanda's twisted version of events. She accused me of being vindictive, of not having Dylan's best interest at heart by creating unnecessary drama. It was an inversion of reality that left me reeling. The very people who should have rallied around Dylan were now siding with his abuser. Then came the visit from Child Protective Services CPS. Because I had filed a report concerning a minor, it was standard procedure. They had to investigate the home environment to make sure Dylan was safe. It was humiliating, dredging up the details, having strangers scrutinize my parenting, my home, after everything I had already been through. But I stood my ground. I cooperated fully, letting them see the loving home I had created for Dylan, the care I provided. I knew I had nothing to hide, and Dylan was my priority. Sitting there, explaining everything for the umpteenth time, I had a stark realization. This is how abusers get protected. Through family silence, through denial, through the misplaced loyalty that prioritizes reputation over justice. So often, victims are forced to suffer in silence because their family won't confront the ugly truth within their ranks. But I refused to be complicit. I refused to let Dylan become another statistic, another whispered family secret that no one dared speak of. The family may have been torn apart, but this wasn't my doing. This was Amanda's. And I was simply refusing to allow her actions to be swept under the rug. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight. E-day of the hearing arrived with a sense of both dread and unwavering determination. Dylan was too young to fully comprehend the legal proceedings, but he understood that something important was happening, something about what Amanda had done. I had explained to him, in the simplest terms, that we were going to make sure no one ever hurt him like that again. I held his hand tightly as we walked into the courtroom, his small fingers clinging to mine, a silent testament to his trust in me. Amanda was there, flanked by her lawyer, looking defiant, almost smug. Maria was beside her, still giving me disapproving glances, still clearly in Amanda's corner. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, condemning. But my gaze was fixed forward. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about Dylan. The prosecutor laid out the charges: emotional abuse and cruelty to a minor. Amanda's lawyer started with a predictable defense. It was a misunderstanding, a childish prank blown out of proportion, an overprotective mother making mountains out of molehills. He tried to paint Amanda as a loving aunt who, while perhaps misguided, meant no harm. He tried to paint me as overly sensitive, an instigator. My jaw tightened, but I remained silent, a calm within the storm of rising anger. I knew what was coming. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke clearly, concisely, recounting the events of that day, Dylan's terror, Amanda's callous indifference. I described finding the video, the cold realization of her intent. Then the prosecutor asked me the question I was waiting for. Ms. Martinez, you mentioned you found an incriminating video on the defendant's phone. Do you have that evidence with you today? Yes, I do, I said, my voice steady. I handed over my phone, which contained a copy of the video I had transferred. The courtroom hushed as the clerk prepared the screen. Amanda, who had been whispering disdainfully to her lawyer, suddenly went rigid. Her eyes darted to the projection screen, then to me, a flicker of panic starting to replace her smirk. Maria shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The video began to play. The shaky footage, Dylan's desperate cries, his face contorted in fear as he searched for his braces. Then Amanda's voice, clear and chilling. You'll have to crawl forever after Mommy abandons you. And the sound that still haunts my nightmares. Her cruel, mocking laughter filled with an enjoyment that made my stomach churn. The camera zoomed in on Dylan's tear-streaked face. His small body slumped on the floor, visibly trembling. The courtroom was silent, a stark, heavy silence. You could have heard a pin drop. The lawyers on both sides, the bailiffs, even the spectators, everyone was riveted, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Judge Helen Tuckerman, a stern woman known for her no-nonsense approach, leaned forward, her expression morphing from careful neutrality to visible outrage. Her gaze, which had been fixed on the screen, now snapped to Amanda. As Dylan's cries echoed through the sound system, I felt Dylan's small hand tighten in mine. He was watching the screen, too, quietly, perhaps finally processing the dark memory. My heart ached for him, but a surge of fierce pride also filled me. He was here, he was safe, and we were finally bringing this truth into the light. When the video ended, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. It felt like an eternity before Judge Tuckerman spoke, her voice measured but laced with an unmistakable fury. Ms. Callahan, she said, her voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. Do you care to explain this? Prank? Amanda looked like she had seen a ghost. Her face was ashen, her jaw slack. The defiant smirk was completely gone, replaced by a trembling fear. Her eyes were wide, darting around as if searching for an escape. For the first time, she looked truly small, truly exposed. The reality of her actions, laid bare for everyone to see, had finally sunk in. She stammered, tried to speak, but no words came out. She just trembled, a raw, primal fear emanating from her. It was a moment I will never forget. It wasn't about victory in terms of legal pronouncements just yet, but it was a profound moment of truth. The truth of what she was, and the undeniable truth of Dylan's suffering. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that no matter what else happened, we had unthinkable sentencing came swiftly after the hearing that day. The evidence, particularly the video, was undeniable. Amanda was charged with emotional abuse and cruelty to a minor. Her lawyer tried to argue for leniency, but Judge Tuckerman was unmoved. The judge delivered a stern lecture about the vulnerability of children, especially those with disabilities, and the heinousness of using fear for personal amusement. Amanda's sentence was probation, a mandatory course of therapy, and community service specific to working with vulnerable populations, a bitter irony, but perhaps a necessary exposure. The judge made it clear that any violation would result in immediate jail time. More than just the legal consequences, Amanda was publicly shamed. The local news picked up the story, anonymizing Dylan for his protection, but clearly identifying Amanda. Her name, image, and the details of her actions were out there, a stain on her reputation that would likely follow her. It was a victory, but a hollow one in some ways, because it came at a cost. The family contact, which had already grown cold, now froze over completely. Maria, my mother-in-law, stopped calling. The few times I tried to reach out, she was distant, her voice dripping with resentment. She couldn't forgive me for what she saw as destroying Amanda's life, for not keeping it in the family. It reinforced my realization that some people prioritize their discomfort with truth over the actual harm caused. Our relationship, which once held a fragile hope of connection through Dylan, was irrevocably severed. I grieve for the loss of that relationship, but I don't regret my choice. Dylan's safety and well-being were paramount. So, I took action. Within weeks, Dylan and I packed up our lives. We decided to move to a nearby town, not too far from Austin, but far enough to create a fresh start, a clean break from the toxic family dynamics and the lingering shadows of that terrible day. It wasn't an easy decision, packing up everything, finding a new school for Dylan, a new routine. But it was necessary. We needed to heal, to breathe, away from the constant pressure and judgment. And in this new town, something truly unexpected and beautiful began to bloom. I found a community that embraced Dylan, not just for his challenges, but for his wonderful, bright spirit. I connected with other parents of children with special needs, and I realized I wasn't alone. Drawing on the fierce protectiveness that Amanda's actions had ignited within me, and my newfound experience navigating the legal system for child protection, I decided to channel my anger into something positive. I started a local parent advocacy group. We meet once a month, sharing resources, offering support, and empowering each other to fight for our children's rights. We talk about everything from advocating for proper educational services to recognizing signs of abuse, and yes, how to deal with difficult family members. It's become a passion, a way to ensure that no other child in our community suffers in silence and no other parent feels as isolated as I once did. The biggest silver lining, though, is Dylan. It took time and a lot of gentle reassurance, but he's beaming brighter than ever. He knows he's safe, he knows he's loved, and he knows I will always fight for him. The fear that Amanda instilled in him has slowly faded, replaced by confidence and a deep understanding that he is worth protecting. He's learned what real love looks like: unwavering, fierce, and utterly devoted. The negative experience, while traumatic, solidified his belief in our bond, in the strength of true, unconditional love. He's thriving in his new school, making friends, and exploring new interests. Sometimes, the greatest gifts come from the darkest moments. Amanda's cruelty ripped a wound in our lives, but it also ignited a flame within me, a purpose that guides me now. It led us to a place of greater peace, stronger connections, and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. Looking back at everything that happened, from the first subtle slights to the horrifying climax of Amanda's prank, and through the exhausting legal process, I can say with absolute certainty that this wasn't just about vengeance. It was about protecting what matters most in my life: Dylan. It was about setting a boundary so clear, so unshakable, that no one would ever dare to cross it again. It's easy, especially within families, to normalize cruelty, to brush off abusive behavior as just family drama, or she didn't mean it, or that's just how they are. People get trapped in cycles of tolerating unacceptable treatment because of shared history, a sense of obligation, or fear of rocking the boat. I spent too long trying to navigate those unspoken rules, trying to preserve a peace that didn't truly exist. I learned, the very hard way, that true peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict when injustice is present. It comes from confronting it head-on, no matter how uncomfortable or painful that might be. This journey taught me an invaluable lesson. Sometimes the hardest battles you'll ever face are with the people closest to you. The ones who share your last name, who have sat at your holiday table, who you've called family. It's a terrifying prospect to stand up to them, to risk severing ties that have been woven into the fabric of your life. But sometimes, standing up means losing those toxic ties to win back your peace, your well-being, and most importantly, the safety of those you love. For Dylan, this entire ordeal, as traumatic as it was, became a catalyst for growth. He is more resilient now, more aware of his own worth. He knows that his mother will always be his fiercest protector, that he will never have to face a monster alone. He's seen justice served, not just in a courtroom, but in the peace we've built, the new community we've found, and the advocacy work we now do. He understands, in a way most 9-year-olds don't, that while the world can be cruel, true love is powerful enough to conquer anything. And for me, I sleep soundly at night. Amanda received her sentence, yes, but the real justice isn't just in her probation or therapy. It's in the quiet hum of our peaceful home, in Dylan's genuine laughter, in the support network I've built that champions compassion and empathy. It's in helping other parents find their voice, to tell their stories, to stand up for their own children. If you are going through a similar situation, please know that you are not alone. Don't normalize cruelty. Don't excuse abuse. Trust your instincts and find your voice. Because no child, no person deserves to be subjected to that kind of pain, to be told their fear is just a prank. Your peace and the safety of your loved ones are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Want to see justice win against cruelty? Like, subscribe, and share this story, because no child deserves what Dylan went through.